get back into it. All right, thank you for your patience. All right, so we had success all over the state, and what I like to say about this program is that it enables middle and high school students the opportunity to start a real business. Sometimes that business is already somewhat predefined. Sometimes that business is made up from scratch. It's an idea that the students come up with, and sometimes it's a mixture of the two. Ultimately, what we like to do from JA's perspective is help prepare young people for their future success. And sometimes that means learning that you aren't going to be an entrepreneur, which means your business may not be that successful. However, as you can see on the screen, we do have some of the figures of our student companies from this very past year and kind of how much money they made in total. So when these student companies do operate and they operate well, they typically are able to generate a profit. What is super exciting to me about that is, generally speaking, those profits go back to the students or the owners of the company. So in some cases where it's a school store, those funds are going to stay right in the district, whereas in other cases where students might be meeting at Microsoft or at CSC, those students and all of those funds that they can generate and turn into a profit go right back into their pockets by the end of the program. I've been, if you will, aggressively trying to expand this program all over the state because it was something that I had back when I was in high school, and I hear that a lot from adults who experience this program and say, wow, that would have been really cool had I would have had that experience. As being someone who has run their own businesses and has a passion for young people knowing how to even just be a leader in their own company that they work for, I wanted to make sure that we brought this experience to as many high school students as possible. So I've been busy trying to get to work doing so. So I appreciate all of you all for being a partner with me and sometimes stick through it through some of those tough years where whether the students weren't as cooperative or maybe their company and their product wasn't selling as well. I really appreciate you all teaming up with JA and bringing it to make it happen. So I do want to share a little bit about what's new in this version of the JA Company program, and then I'll dive right into the specifics of what the program looks like, what it looks like from meeting to meeting. But in general, we have updated a lot of the content. We have what we're calling flexible implementation models. And for your purposes, I want everyone on this call to just understand that I will be talking about the JA Company program teacher-led version today. We do have a volunteer-led version, but that is a program. It's more or less the same program, same content, but instead of being delivered by educators, it's delivered by CSC associates or Microsoft associates. And we just have kind of redefined those implementation models to, number one, give some of our educators additional resources and tools that will allow them to make this fit or work throughout the entire year or throughout a semester. And you'll see pacing guides a little bit later, which you can definitely dive into and customize to your liking. But ultimately, everything JA creates, we try to create it for all of our various stakeholders. We do have in-classroom and remote delivery abilities. However, this year, I will just come out front and state that JA of Delaware will only be able to provide remote or virtual volunteer experiences, including myself. Now, if things drastically change for the better and we are back in school in a in-person kind of regular kind of fashion, then I'm sure JA's insurance and our protection and things like that will also change to suit those needs. But currently, all of the volunteering that we and the volunteers that I have that will be helping to support you this year will all be using either Microsoft Teams, maybe Zoom, or if you have a Google Classroom that you would want them to join, I will be training them to be able to join yours, or if you would prefer that we run and host the meetings, we can do that as well. But we'll get into all those details later on. We've created some subject matter expert volunteer guides, which are really specific and focused on certain aspects of the program. For those of you who have run this program in the past, you'll probably think of and remember moments where it would have been really beneficial to have someone who could come in and just discuss one component and get the company to understand that in order to help them overcome a hurdle. So those are there. We also have some on-demand training videos for our volunteers and educators. Those are still coming out from JAUSA. So as I get them, I'll make them available. We have some interactive self-guided student lessons, which I'm really excited to talk about later on. And then probably for most of you who have run the program in the past, you see this last bullet and you think, oh my goodness, we still have the finance workbook. Yes, we do, but it is brand new and it is awesome. I personally will admit I finally fully understand it now. And those of you who have been working with me for 5 or 6 years, feel free to chuckle. It is a big workbook on Excel, but we have had a CPA volunteer actually go through and provide awesome step-by-step video tutorials for completing each tab of that workbook, the entire workbook, and it's pretty clean and easy to understand now. And I think your students will really appreciate that because, of course, first look at that document and it's a little scary.
Are you sure, Ryan?
Yes. Go ahead.
Are you sure about that?
I am sure. I promise you. And I'm honest when I say I didn't always understand every sheet of that workbook before. You might have noticed how I'd glaze over certain things or go through them a little quicker. Watching those videos, I actually now understand how to use the tools the way they are intended. And I think part of that for certain students, it won't be you or I having to twist their arm to help them understand, why wages should be included or, why company members just are going to work for free all year and then hopefully get paid out at the end. It really goes into the details of why you do the certain things that you do, and then walks them through how to do that. So I'll be excited to hear your feedback though once I give you full access and you can dive into it and take a look and let me know what you think. So this is kind of a new program overview. A lot of you, I might have sent out a milestones document, which looked a little bit different than this. But one reason why I really like the way this is formatted is because it is formatted in the way in which I think about the program. And what I mean by that is when the program runs, there is kind of an early startup and launch phase where you as the educator, my volunteers, and even myself are going to have to be a lot more intentional and a lot more, if you will, engaging, showing the students certain components and certain tools that will eventually they will use or incorporate within their business. So a lot of times students, especially early on in this program, they need that, if you will, handheld guidance. And the program was really set up to be as such. So there are a lot more tools and resources within meetings 1 through 5 than there are, for instance, in meetings 6 through 11. Or I should at least say the tools in meetings 1 through 5 are a lot more, created to be delivered and as like an instructor, whereas meetings 6 through 11 are where you get to kind of act as an advisor. You take more of a backseat, and the students at that point will have formed those business teams that you see kind of there in the middle, and they're now operating their company. They will be, conducting meetings. They will be taking notes. They'll report out on what is working well and what is not. So some of these Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams calls that you'll be having for your hybrid classes this year, come December, January timeframe, my expectation would be that if I joined that meeting and I wanted to welcome a CEO or an entrepreneur into that classroom with your students, that they would be very comfortable bringing that person up to speed on what has been happening and what has been going on. And then it then will allow you and the volunteer and the students to really work on, potential problems or obstacles that are already happening or they foresee happening, and then ways in which they would solve or address those problems. So it then becomes really engaging, and it's a lot easier for you all to kind of step back and allow the students to start crafting what they want to do moving forward. At last, though, and I will just mention, all of these companies must liquidate. So These are, in a lot of ways, sometimes our school stores. They aren't liquidating in a sense of selling all of their assets and closing up shop, but they are, for instance, liquidating away from the students who are participating in the program that year. So a lot of times when I talk about liquidation, for certain student companies, it means taking everything that they might have purchased throughout the year and trying to turn that into cash so that they can pay back investors. They can then pay themselves if they so choose, or they can make contribution or a donation to a nonprofit, or maybe some mixture of all of those. And I'll get into more details of that later. But ultimately, we want them thinking about what they've learned from this experience, a reflection moment, and a look forward. And then ultimately, in order to help me create that awesome document that has how much money student companies have brought in and how many student participants, I want students to be able to write an annual report, which is basically a simple 10-page document bragging about what they did throughout the year, both their accomplishments and failures, but talking about the company they ran. And it's a great kind of leave behind for you all as a school. It's a great, in my opinion, tool that students could use to go out and get a job or apply for colleges. In addition to that annual report, I also like to have a TV commercial, which might not happen this year, and I'll understand that, but there may be some ways in which we can be creative with that, as well as the finance workbook. But we'll get into those details in a little bit later. Now, although we won't actually have you guys logging on to the platform today, I did want to just share with you what that homepage looks like, as well as the URL. I will be sending out an email with, a step-by-step instructor guide on how do you access things and everything like that. But over the next couple slides, I'm just going to share with you kind of what it will look like once you log in, where you can find certain resources. What I'm really excited about here on this first slide is that we have resources that are both available in digital and print. And what I mean by digital, and there is a QR code on that one document there, kind of in the middle, you will be able to take a photo of that, and then it will create, for instance, on your cell phone or on a tablet, what we're calling guide on the side. So it's really intentionally created to be a second screen type of option. So if you have multiple screens in your classroom, you could bring up that guide on the side on one screen, and then on the other screen have your Google Classroom or your Zoom call, as well as your presentation components. There is, of course, other tools and resources in there, as well as the pacing guides and the subject matter expert guides. But in general, that's where all of the volunteer and educator resources are going to be found, are right at the very top of that course. Just below that course is where you're going to find all of the meetings listed. And then you're probably wondering, well, what's in a meeting? Well, this year, what I'm really excited about that we did not have prior is all of our meetings we've now broken up or created them more like a educator kind of designed format. And what I mean by that is, those of you who have been here before, everything was self-contained into one resource. We've now broken those resources up into what is optional and what is required. So you will see, for instance, here on your screen, meeting 5, an OPT, which is an optional resource, as well as REQ for required. So really the only required lessons, you will see those REQs, and they will link back and forth together. But feel free to definitely dive into those optional lessons, especially if you're trying to further explain something or get students to comprehend it a little bit differently. For all of those meetings, yes, welcome.
Oh, some roller coasters. Yeah, some roller coasters.
If you don't mind,
Thank you so
please mute
much.
your line.
Somebody gonna get you some.
Getting a little bit of feedback from someone. Excuse me, if someone doesn't mind muting their line, please. We're getting a little feedback on the call. So, thank you. So what you will also see within each meeting are quizzes. So all of the meetings have session quizzes. We have a pre-program quiz, as well as a post-program quiz or survey. We also have tons of those, what I mentioned earlier, fillable student materials or self-guided student materials. All of those will be found underneath of all of the meetings. So many of you might have questions in relation to, well, who has access to this curriculum and platform? Is it just me, the educator, or is it my students? It's both. So there are ways in which you are able to enroll your students right into the course. When you do that, I would recommend having their school email. There is a template which you can use to upload all of that information very easily into the system. And if you do it where you have their email, it will actually allow them to go right into the platform, which I'll show you later, click on a button, enter their email, and they'll be able to create their own password. If at any point they forget their password, they will actually be able to send themselves an email to get that email or that password reset. Just so you're aware, that's exactly how things will work for all of you. That's why I requested your email. Once I have set you up into your course, basically what will happen is I'll give you a step-by-step guide on clicking through a couple buttons. You'll then reset your own password, and then that will be connected back to your email. So at any point, if you lock yourself out of your account, you can basically unlock yourself. If you do not have students that have emails associated with their school, that's fine. You don't have to have them use personal emails. The system will also generate automatic JA emails if you don't have student emails. And then we have a password that is the same for all of those accounts, but students would still be able to go in and access materials, take quizzes, and that would all be done independently. And you would have a kind of a tracking record for that. But I'll get into all those kind of very, very specific details with each of you as your situation arises and asks for it. What I am excited about, though, that many of you have never had before, is that all of our resources are fillable PDFs. So students could bring them right up on their screen, type in on those PDFs, save that information, download it, and reattach it back to you, whether you use Schoology. They could even do it within their Zoom or Microsoft Teams classroom as well. And then this just kind of talks about the pre-survey as well as the post-survey, and then all of those quizzes that are kind of in between. But all of that information is actually eventually going into a JA assessment engine, which will allow us to, for certain students that we work with from 6th grade all the way through high school, we'll be able to start doing some longitudinal research around, how many interactions or engagements do students need before, certain entrepreneurship competencies or financial literacy or work and career readiness competencies actually are they able to secure and master and be able to provide artifacts for. So it's really exciting stuff. So I encourage you to use it, but it's not a requirement. Now, before I move to banking, I do just want to pause and see if there are any questions for me about the platform side of things. Now, for those of you who are brand new, I will schedule a one-to-one training with you and we can walk through a few things together. But I will also let you know that at the end of this training today, I will be available to click through some stuff and show you all in person what that stuff looks like. But if there are any quick questions, I'm more than happy to answer those now. Well, moving right along then. So banking. So as these companies are, getting created in terms of they're coming up with their idea, they're situating themselves and organizing themselves to launch this company, they will then need some type of bank account or some type of way to track their financials. So what I'm recommending, especially because of the virtual environment that we're in, is that we move forward with Square. I know some of my partners payment processors. It allows basically you to have an online dashboard, which gives you full control over the administration of that account. It allows you to also have a free website, which could help with sales. And what I'm really excited about is that students could also be paid through Square. So when it comes to liquidating their company and actually having either a check sent to them or even money directly deposited into their Cash App account, which many of our young students have, that is something that is available. The other cool feature about Square is it does come with the ability to order a debit card, in which then before you transfer the money from your Square account to the bank account, which JA manages that component, you're able to actually spend the money that is on that Square account. So for capital $100 in which they could go and spend on raw materials. But I'll get more into that later. Our second partner bank, though, is WSFS. We've used them in the past. There's just more signatures of documents and signings and things like that that are going to make it a little bit more challenging to get that set up. So I would really prefer, if we can, move to Square. But if that's not possible, then I'll work with those of you who do want to go forward with a WSFS account. Although not ideal, we do offer the last option, which is a school-controlled internal account. It's almost only used in situations where we're partnering with a school store. But we can use internal accounts. Usually, though, it slows down when the students have access to their funds, whether that's to buy more materials or to pay themselves. And that draws away from the ownership of the experience and this program. So it's not ideal, but we can go forward with that if that's your only option. So I know I kind of already talked a little bit about, it being one of, small businesses' most used point of sale software programs. I know a lot of stores and restaurants and things like that I walk into, I'll pick up on notice that they're using Square. So I see this also as a great training for these students to be able to go and get a job during summer months or years right after high school. It does allow you to accept debit, credit, Apple and Google Pay, as well as Cash App, cash and check, but it does not work with Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo, which are more peer-to-peer type of financial situations. We do provide training that will happen usually early on in the year, but then I'm actually also going to be offering ongoing training supports, which I'll get into more later, directly around Square. We have a capitalization limit of $500 that we set. And part of the reason for that is usually our JA companies can capitalize for $500, buy what they need to build their product, and then use that same flow, or if you will, that business cycle of buying something, selling it, and then coming back around to reinvest, buying more products, selling, to create a positive cash flow and ultimately a profit. The reason we keep that minimization or that capitalization maximum at that amount is it lowers the risk that students, find $2,000 worth of investors, which couldn't be friends and family. It could be, school districts. It could be, all kinds of different ways in which these companies can capitalize. And then they can't get that money back to those owners, those investors. Now, of course, that's part of investment, right? You take a risk. However, and a lot of times our students are able to return those investments. We like them to start small and then learn the process of creating a positive cash flow and reinvesting those profits right back into their business, which also allows them to manage more control and ownership over the company themselves. We do encourage that they invest in themselves, but they have the ability to invest or have others invest via crowdfunding platforms, Square, or just by the old-fashioned way of buying and selling paper shares, which they would fill out and submit to those individuals via email. All of our information about shares and investing into the company is found within Meeting 4. There are some new videos that are going to help out with that. But there is information on the finance workbook, which kind of goes into where that information is stored and how students store it so that they can, of course, hopefully make good on those investments. For sales, it's going to be a little bit more challenging this year. I'm already trying to brainstorm and come up with some ideas with some of my colleagues in other states across the country who have, basically my same job, how we can help with fulfillment and how we can make it easier for students to produce their products, especially if there are multiple steps, how we can make it easier for them to ship things out if that's something that they want to do, or how we can just make it easiest for schools and students to maybe make the school be the location in which customers can come and pick up products on one particular day, with scheduled interval times or something to that effect. No matter what, we're going to customize per your needs. Now, as we are kind of moving to the end of the curriculum side of things, I know I mentioned this earlier, but the liquidation is one of the most important parts of this. Part of it is because these students, when they create these businesses and these companies, they're also actually helping create value and wealth. And at the end of the day, that value and wealth that is connected with JA has to be separated from junior achievement. Now, that's not to say these students can't take their idea and keep running with it and maybe run that business officially. However, through our JA company program, that's just not something they can do. So they will liquidate. They'll figure out what they're going to do with the profits that they made. If they made profits, if they didn't make profits, they most likely have inventory or resources that they purchased that are available, but they have to figure out what they're going to do with those. In a lot of cases, feel free to call on me and I'll help them through that process. But a lot of times our volunteers can help them kind of decipher what to ultimately do with those proceeds. Now it comes to roles and responsibilities. And I know there was, path forward and making a plan. There was also the annual report. I will talk a little bit more about those later, but those are also things that at the end of the program, I provide kind of a guide and a tool to kind of help your students build that document out. And then you guys get to kind of work with them to make sure they do it. A lot of times though, because it is connected to our events, it's a requirement for our end of year regional competition. The students are interested in fulfilling and going forward with that and succeeding and showing what they were able to succeed in that year with their company. Kind of what you see here on screen is that I'm here to provide you all support, ongoing trainings, things to that nature, and you all in coordination with the volunteers that I'm out currently recruiting, which of course, if you have volunteers that you want to use or you'd like JA to train up and make expert, virtual volunteers out of, we're more than happy to work with them. But you all and those volunteers are what really bring this program to life. And it's that early on engagement, that early on kind of push and showing the students how they need to do things that helps them eventually learn how to take over and really run with the program. And you have to step back. And of course, they will probably stumble and fall and fail a couple times early, but that's probably something that all of us, have used in our own careers, whether we've been in them a short amount of time or a much longer period of time to help us, move on to our next step. So I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that this experience will go smooth and your kids won't have, challenging moments where they have arguments with each other and they got to figure it out and deal with it. But it is something that I think will ultimately prepare them for success in the real world, a world that's very different than many of us have grown up in. Now, this document I am going to be making available as a Microsoft Excel document. It has some clickable check mark boxes, if you will, on the bottom of it, which I created to try and help you all kind of know, here's what's coming up, here's what you need to be ready for kind of from month to month. It follows very closely with that program milestones document you saw at the early stages of our training. But really, I wanted to create this just to help you all and my volunteers know, here's kind of what's happening and here's when it's going to happen within the program. Some of you might be sitting here saying, Ryan, we're now on semesters. We're no longer running the whole school year. If that is your, current state, just let me know via email. We can, of course, connect. And depending on, whether your students will, what they'll be doing in the second semester, there's always a chance that, we could have one or two of them come back or stay with the company and be kind of a leader, and kind of help coach up their other classmates when we get to the competitions. But that's just something that, we can talk about on a one-on-one basis. I color coordinated it to hopefully make it easy. But the one thing I do kind of want to share with you about this tool is that all the way on the right-hand side, you will see in May and June where we collect information and we submit it ahead to our National Student Leadership Summit. The more information we can get early on, especially back even as early as March, to help us get prepared for that national summit, the better. So if that's something that ultimately you want to, kind of put out there as a goal and have your students aspire to be able to attain, I will say it's quite challenging to get to the national summit. I've been in this role 6 years, and we've had 2 companies make it in those 6 years. We had a team last year and then a team back in 2016-17, which I'll share some pictures with. But it's a difficult competition to get into nonetheless. But if we can help prepare the kids and make them know that that's kind of the end of the road for them, it's probably one of the best high school experiences that they'll ever have, even if it ends up being a virtual experience like they are planning for this year. So that being said, I'm going to keep our training moving. I know I mentioned this earlier, but I am going to be hosting 2 recurring monthly meetings that are 2 weeks apart. One of those will be all about volunteers and educators. So you all being able to jump on a call with all of our volunteers, not just the ones you're partnered with and working with. And it'll be a best practice sharing. I have problems, help me brainstorm solutions. It'll be that plus just a great networking experience for my educators, my volunteers. We'll have people from CSC, my host site businesses, but we'll also just have our volunteers who represent other companies who aren't necessarily hosting JA companies. And then the other meeting will be all about Square. So it will be all about, me providing some best practices, me providing some tutorials on how to set up your online website, how to change some of your features or settings. And of course, at the end of the day, if you all have questions about either of these, let me know. But I am going to have a 1-page document that will have all of those meetings, the dates, and a hyperlink to the Microsoft Teams meeting that we'll be using for those, that you'll be able to just click on, and it'll directly bring you right into this meeting like you came today. I'm excited about those because I know in this new normal of being online, it's going to be, of course, we're going to have fatigue of being online and on virtual platforms. But I know a lot of you, sometimes driving all the way down to Georgetown or Delmar or wherever it was, I had to plan that out a couple weeks in advance. Well, now, you'll always have this meeting on an ongoing basis, but I can also virtually meet up with all of you a lot faster than I previously could in person. So I just wanted to share that as kind of one of the last components before we kind of slightly shift gears in our training today, because I think part of it is about providing you all information, not an overload. I'm sure a lot of you still have questions around the platform and content and all of that kind of stuff. But I think the other side of this is helping to paint a picture of what this experience can mean for young people, and how it really connects to where they're at in their own social kind of life. So I promised I would share some of our recent success stories. And this was it was our first National Student Leadership Summit contender whenever I came to JA of Delaware. And they met at the Microsoft store, and it was 5 young ladies who never knew each other. They all came from different high schools, and together they wanted to create a social awareness brand promoting positivity, self-love, and diversity. And I can't think of a better company that was started 4 years ago for what is currently happening in today's day and age. So it's pretty cool that these kids, it helps give them that launch. I know at least 2 of them are actually still at the University of Delaware in the Horn Entrepreneurship Program there. One of them pitched at Founders Day like 2 days ago, 3 days ago, maybe last Thursday, I can't recall exactly. And and the other one I believe will be graduating this coming winter. But I just wanted to share that as a success story of where these kids go and how they use this experience kind of going forward. The next 2 years, we actually had teams that came out of Salem High School, and those students came over to Delaware and competed and ended up winning the Company of the Year competition in 2017-18, 2018-19. And although their products were a little bit similar in terms of what the product was, as you can see here, it's various items that young people need on an everyday basis. And then the second one was a little bit more of a niche product. However, kind of the same thing, what do high school kids want and need? Now, some of these things, and I wanted to bring this up, might be challenging to create in a virtual environment or virtual space. As you can see, a lot of those had a lot of different pieces coming together for one product. That's why I kind of wanted to share this year's winning company, which came from Concord High School. Shannon DeFrancesca had this year's Raiders Inc. Company called Sea Straws, and they created a stainless steel replacement for your drinking straw. So it was made out of stainless steel. It had a really nifty little carrying case that had a carabiner on it, so you could hook it to your purse, bag, whatever, belt buckle, you name it. And they were trying to make a difference on saving the environment as well. That product, because it came all together, if you will, already built, was something that could be very easily purchased, have those things arrive at one person's house, who then is the person in charge of putting labels on envelopes and shipping products out. The one right next to that, though, was a little bit more complicated in terms of building the product. These students were at CSC's host site, and they were able to make it to our National Student Leadership Summit this year, but they created a kind of an additional accessory to your traditional pop cord or your traditional pop socket. So they called it the pop cord, and it had a little carrying case where you could stuff your earbuds or other items into the back of that phone grip. Now, the last kind of 3 things that I wanted to share with you are some testimonials. So as I'm trying to help you paint this picture of what this experience can be for students, I wanted to give you 3 quotes from 3 people who I admire and respect, and I think really phrased how well this program makes an impact on them, whether it's from a student's perspective, an educator, or a volunteer. And then kind of lastly, to kind of wrap things up, I wanted to share with you, in my opinion, how I think about the program. So we have an in-school model where it can be implemented with a teacher, an educator like you all. I know we have some administrators on this call as well. So there's other models, if you will, and ways in which I think about it. We have an after school to where it could still be physically or virtually as part of the school. However, it's not necessarily connected or brought into a certain class. And then lastly, which is something that I just recently posted online about, we are taking host site business applications. So if you have students that, for instance, you won't have in class this year, that you've worked with in the past, who you think this would be a great experience, or maybe they took your class as a junior, but they finished your pathway and there's just nothing else for them to take, and they may have some availability or open time in the after school hours time frame, I would love to have them apply for the host site internship experience. I will be sending that link for that application out in the email to follow today's training. But instead of it happening, of course, at school, those students will be virtually meeting with CSC associates, JP Morgan Chase associates, or Microsoft associates this year to help them come up with their idea and run their business. And then, although I'm not going to ask you all to answer these questions on screen, kind of like a quiz, if you will, the reason I like throwing these questions up, and I have these summary and then one more slide for reflection questions before we then go right into kind of a Q&A. And then if individuals say, Ryan, show me the platform, I would really want to check it out, I can do so. I like to bring this up just to kind of help you all think about maybe some of those components or parts of the program that you just want to make sure you understand and know, what are my expectations? What is Ryan going to provide me? What are my volunteers going to do to help support me? But I like these questions just because I think they are helpful in better understanding, what this program is all about, and what you need to kind of either, if you aren't sure how to do, reach out to me, or find other resources to help support. And that kind of really goes into with what I've created here as reflection questions, because ultimately my training today, I want you all to give me feedback on, Ryan, here's what you can do better, or Ryan, here's one area that we really need more help in, whether it's you or one of your associates, your colleagues, maybe you all can team up and come up with a solution for us in that realm. So whether it's work-based learning focused, whether it's what could we add to your class to make it more engaging, that's really what this kind of slide is all about. So if you have questions or whatever information I guess you all have for me, I did want to just, of course, share my contact information here. You all have that via email, but then I really wanted to kind of turn this around and hear from you all, what kind of questions you had. If you wanted me to go ahead and move over to the platform and click on some stuff, I can do that. But I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chat box here. And if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and jump on here and ask. If you would prefer to type it in the chat box, that's also accessible. All right, Tracy's saying she'd like to see the platform. Very good. We can definitely do that. Does anyone else have questions or need me to cover back over something that I maybe went too quickly over? Great question, Brandy. So yes, the slide deck will be made available and all of that stuff is hyperlinked and will work for you. I also see Josh said, let's go to the platform. So that's great. Might have some additional questions later on. But yes, everything that I shared with you here, as well as some of those, they were really like snapshots out of those documents. I'll provide those as real documents. So, and if you want to, customize them, or even like, for instance, the impact document, to all of my educators who have been working with me for years, if you want to throw in some of your other student companies in there and some of their information so that you could provide that back to your administrators or to your local district person who might push something out to community members, that's really what I want this to kind of turn into. Because ultimately, once these kids get their businesses up and running, and if they're using a Square website, I see them potentially having some great website traffic and making some good sales. So I definitely see that as a great opportunity. Let me go ahead and I'll bring up the platform. All right. Can everyone see the screen here? So this is what the platform will look like. When you type learn.ja.org, it will redirect you to this page. Of course, I will click over here for staff, but just for purposes of showing you exactly what you will be doing, once I get your email and your class and course all set up, you'll click this button. The first time, you'll come in here and you'll click Forgot Password. You'll enter your email address. As you see here, I've entered some others. You'll click Reset Password. That'll send you an automatic reset password link. And then you'll come right back in here and click this, and you'll enter that email and password once you set that password. At any point you forget your password or you need it reset, you can come right back in here and complete those steps once again. So you're in control of your password now. There's nothing I can do to help support you other than provide you URLs and links back to this page here. Once you go into the platform from learn.ja.org, this is where you will fall. So kind of your platform, it has your little username up here. There's some stuff you can change up there if you feel like it. And then what you have here on your page, some of it will be looking just like this. You, of course, won't have staff resources or some of these other buttons, for instance. But for all of your classes and your courses, you will click on Programs, and then you will have your program listed. Okay, I see we have a question, so I'm going to bring that up so I can see it. Oh, it has to leave. No worries. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up one of these demo educator-led company program courses so that you all can see exactly what that looks like. Kind of earlier it mentioned here's all of your information. There's just some welcome. You can click next and it'll kind of go through these drawers over here on the left-hand side. When you click one of these drawers, it'll open it up. There's all of your volunteer resources, for instance. So the guide for the volunteers and teachers, which is a digital or print. In fact, let me click on that. It brings up a window. You click that play button and it's going to bring this up. Just to let you all check it out if you feel like it. If you want to go ahead and just bring your phone up right now and just bring your camera up on your phone. As soon as you hover over top of this URL or this QR code, it'll actually allow you to click to that link, and it'll show you what your guide on the side will look like. So if you want to go ahead and do that, feel free to bring up your phone. I'll give you another moment to check that out. Once I click out of that, kind of close that tab, you'll be right back here on the platform. One thing to note is it will provide a little check mark or a little kind of ticker to let you know, have you looked at everything there or have you just started to look at it? So that'll kind of help you keep on track. There's other resources here, but we'll kind of move forward. The pre-program survey is available online or as a downloadable document. Then meeting one, kind of as I had mentioned before, there's of course all kinds of information here, right? But you will notice where it says optional and required, just to keep you kind of focused in what you need to do. Now, personally, I find all these tools and resources beneficial and helpful, but depending on your time, and I know that's going to be a little bit more of a constraint this year, especially of how much you can do on camera or with the students in a class. You can also tell them, I want you to go through and watch all of these components on your own, because they will have access to every single one of these tools and resources, unless it's a volunteer or teacher only type of document. So you could ask them, come in and watch the video about the JA National Student Leadership Summit. Then we're going to come back together and we're going to talk about products. They click on that, it's going to bring up a video here. They can watch, you can make it full screen here, just to show you kind of what an interactive learning resource looks like so that you can see that. We'll go full screen just so you can see it this way. There are navigation controls here on the bottom and then here on the left and right hand side. You can also use your keyboard for this. But this is where you might want to have this information up on your one screen that you're sharing with the students, and then have your guide on the side on a second screen so you have your talking points available and you can go through this. So the whole way in which our platform is created and set up is that we have, if you will, sometimes ideas sharing and conversations, and then there's a video. And a lot of our videos do come from the Kauffman Foundation, which is one of the leaders in entrepreneurship. And then finally, after you've had a video or an activity or something to do, there's a debrief session. Maybe some discussion questions. These could be, quiz related or otherwise. To get back out of that, and kind of hit escape, and that'll make it small. And then you come back into your next component. As you see here, it gives me a check mark, so I know, all right, I finished that one up. Of course, you have all the other meetings and more resources, but I'll come down here to the materials and resources section. So this is the editorial, which puts it all here in a clean, easy, hyperlinked area. So you might tell students, I want you to, go check out the competitive advantages and unique value proposition. I'm going to see what this tool looks like. What are our objectives? So we'll identify what is a competitive advantage related to our plan and try to figure out how we can have a compelling value prop, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to be selling, the it factor. So it kind of goes through what competitive advantages are, how you build that, and then there's an activity, right? So we're going to click continue on that. I'm going to wrap up, and I believe it lets them know you've completed this. You can move on to the next topic. But let's just say there is a worksheet. So let me come back down here. That was interactive learning resource doc. Those are all interactive. Let's go to the finance workbook. Well, I don't want to do that yet. We'll go to the marketing task list. All right, so this task list, kind of before you would, you guys, if you remember this, had all these bubbles and things like that on it. Now, you can ask them, come in here and I want you to select your primary leader. So Bill, he's our leader. The deadline is 9/8, and I can download this and I can email it right back to my teachers, and you all then have this information already saved. So what's really cool that we've never been able to make available yet is that you all now be able to have students work on these things directly, online or otherwise, and then send it right back to you. So I just kind of wanted to share with you how those students will just type and text or type right on them, and then they can save them by downloading the PDF and emailing it back to you. Let me see if I have any questions. I see some people have other meetings, so they had to take off, which is no problem. I guess, are there other specific questions? I know I could get into the finance workbook, just because I know there is a video that goes ahead of that. There's several videos actually. So an overview video, then about the budget that's 10 minutes long. Then there's the break even and profit analysis video, which is 5 minutes long. So there's all these videos, and then they also have kind of working through those documents with the students. So let me just go to the finance overview, which is a self-guided activity, as you can see here. Just so you can see what that would look like a little bit differently than those interactive learning resources in which you all are leading. So we'll describe importance of finance, and we'll take on the primary tasks and responsibilities. So choose the right answer and click submit. I need your help, team. What do you all think? Very cool. All right, we're going to explore. So it's going to go into a little bit of your financial responsibilities and helping to plan that for the business. Once it's launched, they'll keep track of everything. Okay. Very cool. Talk about revenue streams, cost structure, and breaking even. All very important things for these JA company members to learn. Excellent. And if you've noticed, I'm looking through this for the first time with you all as well. We've had this curriculum for about a week and a half, and I haven't seen everything yet. So our primary responsibilities as a finance team. So we need to select our team leader. We need to read our financial prep doc. That's going to help us with our bank account. We'll have to select a financial record keeper, different than our team leader. We need to meet with these other teams to discuss potential expenses. We can work on the break even. So there's a lot for us to do, right, as the finance department. They're not going to complete that, for instance, in one meeting. And that's why when I mentioned earlier, these self-guided or meeting 6 through 11 activities should and will take a lot longer than one class period or even a week, for instance. But I just kind of wanted to share with you what this kind of individual self-guided type of activity looked like. A little bit different than some of these meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3 resources. Are there any other specific questions to something you would like to see on the platform? Of course, if you go back, if I click back here, I see I'm actually on Mr. Easton's class, but that won't bother him because I can go in here and check things out and it's only connected to me as my account. So that won't bother him. He won't see where I've looked at things or anything like that. But you come in here to programs, you have all your programs. There will be a couple different resources here, mainly the JA Company Program Resources channel. You won't have these others. That's all staff training. There is a training on blended learning if you feel like watching. But this main home page, it does have some other community resources here. They're not used that much, so I wouldn't recommend diving too deep into it. But as you can kind of see, I do have, financial literacy courses and marketing courses and business and technology courses. So as you're leading this JA Company program, if you start realizing there are opportunities for you to include other lessons or other activities that you think would be really, really helpful to help the students better understand something or move through a process easier, we can always pull an activity from this program and splice it right in, no problem. But this is, more or less you jumping into the platform here and clicking on things, learning things, doing a little bit of prep work prior to a first class would be helpful. But at the end of the day, I'm here to help join one of your classes, to help lead these sessions. I've had a lot of experience in that, and I'm more than comfortable doing so. So I really want you all to lean on me in terms of, Ryan, I really want some support on this. What are your recommendations on leading a session? Or do you mind joining me for my first session? That's something I'm always willing to do. Typically, and I know I kind of had this in the PowerPoint, I like starting this program in October. So to have about 4 to 5 weeks before our very first Piranha Pond pitch event, which will be virtual this year, where students will pitch their business idea partially to learn how to communicate better and how to present better. But then part of it's also they may need funding. And we have some JA sponsors who will come in and be judges. They'll listen to those pitches, and then they may determine how much funding, seed funding, these student companies may get. That event I like to hold in middle of November. So for all timing of, getting this whole program started and ready to go, I'm looking to kick things off on Monday, October 5th, in terms of like in-class programs. That way you would have basically 5 weeks, five full weeks prior to our very first Piranha Pond pitch event, which I'm looking to hold on Thursday, November 12th currently. Then the following week on Tuesday, the 17th, I'm looking to have our Kent County Piranha Pond pitch event. And then most likely on Thursday or Friday of that week, the 19th or 20th, hold our Sussex County Piranha Pond pitch event. So just wanted to let you all know those are my tentative dates. But if you kick off October 5th, that gives you basically 6 weeks prior to the launch of the business, which if you notice here on our curriculum, you have meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, meeting 4, meeting 5, and that's launching your company. So think of meeting 5 as correlated to our Piranha Pond pitch event. So you may spend a little extra time helping to solve customer problems, helping to brainstorm additional products. You may say, I need more than weeks to come up with a really good idea, or my students to come up with that idea, right? So think of that, if you will, that kickoff. And if you want to, have conversations with your students before October 5th, that's fine. But that's kind of where I like to kick things off. That way your students have kind of gotten into the flow of things. I know the beginning of the school year is going to be a little bit challenging regardless, but I just kind of wanted to share that with you all so that you could, and I see Tracy's question. Yes, I do have the timeline, and I will make that available as well. But that timeline basically, yeah, if you started October 5th and gave each one of those, first 4 meetings a week's worth of prep time and maybe 2 weeks for certain ones, you'd have plenty of time to get your kids ready for the Piranha Pond pitch event that we'll have in mid-November. Great question. Other questions? Other tours of the online platform, or did I do a thorough of enough job to help keep you all engaged and satisfied on what that is until you can actually go in and click around yourselves? Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. So let me go ahead and bring us all back. So I guess at this point, I do want to open it up to questions. I would love to have those of you who have participated before to maybe share some of your thoughts around what works, what doesn't work, maybe what you're going to incorporate this year, which you haven't incorporated in years prior. I know for some of you that might be taking the Square platform that you've always been using in person and now making sure the online website version of that is looking spiffy and fresh. I do think that's going to be a great opportunity for our student companies to make good money, is to sell their products online. They could be selling to people in West Virginia, where I grew up, or any other state across the country, and just charge their customer for shipping. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. I know it's a lot of info. I also didn't want to dive too deep into some of this. At the end of the day, I'm here to be a resource to provide additional ongoing trainings. And then, like I said, and let me pull that document up and share it with you, just so you have it. You can see kind of what it's looking like from a, let me move it over here. I know I keep mentioning those trainings that I'm going to be holding with you all or making myself available for. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see what that looks like. But basically, you can kind of see, I'm going to start with the Square trainings second. I'll first have the volunteer and educator meetups that'll begin in late September. Now, this is just for, if you will, adults getting on, talking, working through challenges, or saying, Ryan, how does my schedule look? And do you think that's going to work? So it can be any mixture of that. But then as we kind of move throughout the year, I really want it to become a lot more of you all bringing in suggestions, ideas, challenges. And I know a lot of it's still kind of up in the air. Like, we're remote until October, and then we don't know what's happening. So just know that you can count on me to be here to help support you this year. I'm doing everything I can to make myself available. But if you want to reach out to me directly and say, Ryan, that was a great overview, but I really need you to train me more specifically on, delivering the content and making sure students have access and all that stuff, just know that I'm more than happy to set all of those things up individually with all of you. I see some comments about people having to take off for other meetings, which I knew was going to be the case. That's why I knew I wasn't going to take 2 full hours. So I appreciate you all, making that available. Even for these meetings, I see these as an hour and a half of me available. You might only need 15 minutes with me, and then you could jump off. But similar to this, I am going to record it. I'll post that somewhere or send it out via email so that it might be 10 p.m. when you have a free moment to watch and see what everyone was chatting about that month. But I do just want to make sure that's available to you all as an additional support feature. I will send an email with, of course, this document, the PowerPoint slides, the timeline document, the impact document, all these kind of individual documents. I'll be putting them all together and sending you all an email. So please make sure, if you have not done so yet, go ahead and drop your email into the meeting chat. That way I can reach out to you. I know most of you, I don't think I have anyone on this call that I did not email earlier today, but just to make sure that I have your information, I wanted to make sure you guys drop that in the chat box. But if anyone has questions, I'm going to be quiet for the next couple moments and allow anyone who wants to jump on here and ask a question to do so. And if there are no questions, then I either did a thorough job or I scared everyone with tons of information and a lot of tools that sound great, but seem more difficult to implement. I guess just to reiterate, I'm here to make sure the implementation happens. You just have to be able to say, Ryan, we need your help, and make it happen. Because I've had some years of experience in this. In terms of helping, I'll even sit down with each of your schools, for instance, and train your students on Square, and we could set up, a monthly recurring meeting with just your kids. So, whatever your goals and whatever your hopes are with what this kind of JA company program and Square can create for your school or your district, I want you to be candid with me, and I want you to, let me know what your thoughts are, so that I can start putting resources and energy towards that. I know, for instance, with Bill and Josh, who are on this call, we've had a lot of conversation about, incorporating multiple departments within school to be able to sell online, for instance. And, just know that I'm here to help support you all in that this year. It may be we can go about it as we find out more information or as the district allows us. But, just to let you all know, I'm excited about, helping you all with those plans. And I think it'll be a lot of fun working with you all and learning how we can better serve you as we move forward. I appreciate everyone's compliments and thanks per the training and the information that I provided. I'll give just another quick quiet space in case anyone wants to jump on here and say something.
Ryan, you did great. As usual, I have like a ton of thoughts, ideas, so I'll get a hold of you. Especially as we kind of see, where we are starting to go and lean toward in work-based learning in McCain. And now, of course, Red Clay, I have to update you on that, and a little bit of change in my role there, too.
Very good, Bill. I appreciate that. And yeah, we can always catch up more later on. Thank you to everyone else who left wonderful comments in the chat. So I know individuals are probably going to be jumping off here soon. I appreciate you all taking the time out of your afternoon to join me for this training. Definitely please reach back out to me, and I'll be following up with all kinds of resources and tools. And then I look forward to supporting you all this year. And even if that changes month to month, we'll go at it just like real entrepreneurs, and we'll just swing with the punches. But thank you all so much. I appreciate your time, your commitment to our young people. And I hope everyone has a safe and happy, healthy holiday weekend. And good luck to you all next week as you start kicking things off. Everybody have a great afternoon and take care.